So that gives us a Slay trigger. That gives us 2 Slay triggers. I mean, obviously this isn't great for us by any means, especially since he probably comes down with Aurelia next turn and gets a bunch of free attacks. But, you know, we did what we could. We get to play Azir to block as well, so that's at least nice. Hey everyone, Raptor Spank here, and today we have On the Grind, the show where I cover a deck I'm playing in Ranked. We'll break down the deck, talk about some flex spots, and then go over some basic mulligans as well. So, what are we playing this week? We're playing another aggro deck, but one that's kind of been around since the expansion hit, but I haven't really had an opportunity to play it yet, or really play it to much amount anyways. I've played it in normals a bit last season, and a little bit this season as well, but it's Azir Burn. Typical Noxus aggro burn package combined with some of the better Shurima pieces, or more aggressive Shurima pieces like Azir. And the idea is really simple. Kill your opponent as fast as possible and just run them into the ground. And we do that through a number of different ways. But first off, let's talk about the champion package, which begins with the 3 copies of Azir. This is one of the biggest reasons to run it. We get these free sand soldiers on our attacks that constantly deal all this extra damage and just kind of outvalue our opponent for very little on our part. We're going to be attacking anyways, so we might as well be swinging with it. And Azir himself can turn into a pretty massive threat once he levels up because he gets pretty huge amounts of power very quickly, and he also buffs all the sand soldiers and anything else we play, so that makes even things like House Spider become a real threat on their own because of that damage increase. So Azir's just kind of an all-around great card for the deck, and even his champion spell's not that bad when you think about it, because it does just give you all these extra attackers at burst speed, which can be really, really good into certain matchups, especially if you're expecting slow board wipes like Avalanche or Ruination that can get past it. And then from there, we have the last champion, one single copy of Darius. He's not a huge part of the deck, but essentially he's just there as the largest or one of the largest overwhelm threats in the game that you can drop for only 6 mana, and we should get him to the point that pretty much anytime you're playing Darius, he levels up right then and there. He's just a really good closeout for the deck, but otherwise not a big focal point of the deck. So, looking at our follower package, we have 3 copies of Bakai Reaper, probably one of the more odd cards to see in this deck, but we essentially have so many really good aggressive units that we're swinging at our opponent that our opponent's going to be chump blocking. So, Bakai Reaper will actually get pretty big fairly quickly, and because of Fearsome, it can be pretty sticky into certain matchups, especially like the Aurelia matchup that we're seeing right now is that they have a hard time blocking Fearsome, so something like Bakai Reaper is really, really strong, and even in the Aurelia matchup, they're probably going to chump block some of our threats, because if they don't, we will run them down faster. So this can get really out of control into that matchup, so that's the big reason we're running it. In addition then, we have 3 copies of Dunekeeper. Obviously, this is the best aggro piece in Shurima, and one of the best one-drop aggro pieces in the game in general, because it does produce potentially up to 4 damage on turn 1. And it does give you 2 bodies on board, so that's really, really strong for even playing on the defensive to block. And then just in general, too, if they do play something that can block and you don't want to swing that turn, well, you can always just swing with a Sand Soldier anyways and at least threaten something. So it's just all sorts of good, and it helps level up our Azir really fast. Just one of the best, if not the best, one-drop in the deck for us. And then we have 3 copies of Legion Rearguard. This is seeing a lot of play these days, now that it's up to 2 health again, and it's really good in this deck, obviously. Can't block, can hurt us at times, but it's a 3 power, comes down on turn 1, one of our best one-drops as well, because of the fact it can produce 3 damage pretty reliably, and it's very hard to chump block, because most of the things that come down on turn 1 aren't going to be able to trade with it, so just a really solid, obvious include in pretty much any Noxus aggro deck. Then we also have, in a similar vein, 3 copies of Legion Saboteur, another just auto-include into Noxus aggro decks, because even if they can chump block this, it's still going to deal 1 damage to our opponent's Nexus, so really good aggro piece, definitely worth the include in the deck, and does lots of good things for us. We have 3 copies of House Spider as well. Just a nice little go wide board option, and also it does help fuel a number of things like, say, the Bakai Reaper that I mentioned by presenting a bunch of different trades, and it can be really great with some of our vulnerable aspects, i.e. playing Merciless Hunter and giving vulnerable to something. We can always pull that with a Spider to get us a lot of value. Or it also helps with just ensuring that we just get a lot of value onto the board very quickly. I mentioned with Azir, if you level them up and then play a house spider, suddenly this really unimposing spiderling becomes a threat all in of itself, and house spider itself is even bigger, so just a lot of great value we can get out of this. Then we have 3 copies of Imperial Demolitionist. Nice little burn card, body with burn, I should say. Comes down on turn 2. We have some things that can really facilitate this, like playing it and pinging a rear guard or a Bakai Reaper, so we can actually play this on curve more than most Noxus aggro decks can. And we do just have a lot of things that can take that 1 point of damage without being a huge threat. And a lot of things that benefit from slaying, so hey, maybe we just kill the Spiderling because we know it's going to buff our Bakai Reaper and turn on Ruinous Path. So there's definitely a lot of value we can get out of Demolitionist, possibly even more value than most other decks, with the exception being maybe the Gangplank deck, where this can give it a damage trigger on an off turn, but very, very solid in the deck. And we also have 3 copies of Legion Grenadier. This is just a really good card, especially right now, because there are a lot of aggro decks, like Aurelia, that can outrace us, so being able to play Grenadier and block with it is really, really solid, especially since it can take 1 blade and then block another thing, and then when it blocks and dies, it's still going to give us value by dealing 1 damage to our opponent's Nexus. And it does block Fearsomes, which there are a number of Fearsomes that are concerning, like Nasus, so it's a nice little backup for that. We then also have the 3 copies of Merciless Hunter, one of the best new Shurima aggro pieces to come out, because it's a 4-3 with Fearsome. That comes down on turn 3, really well statted, and because it gives vulnerable to something, it can even kind of protect itself by giving vulnerable to something that can block Fearsome, and then you pull that out of the way with like a Spiderling or something else to enforce the most amount of damage to go through. So lots of great things here. And finally, top of the curve, 3 copies of Ruin Runner. It's one of the best overwhelmers in the game because of the fact that it comes with Spell Shield already off the top, and it's already a 6/4. Really, really strong card. Great finisher for the deck to just essentially get those last points of damage through. Then we also have our spell package. Very, very simple. 3 copies of Ruinous Path. Great in this deck. Also good for helping us hold our own against faster aggro decks like Aurelia by draining them, so we deal burn damage to them, but also gain life, so they're not killing us quite as quickly, and we have many, many ways to trigger Slay. As I mentioned, your opponent's going to be blocking stuff, and your stuff's going to be dying because your stuff dies very easily, and that will trigger Ruinous Path to draw you a card and drain your opponent. We also have 3 copies of Noxian Fervor, just a nice, good Noxus burn spell. We don't have access to the Piltover burn package, so this is just more burn to kind of close out the game in the late, and also you can always block with something and then Noxian Fervor it to still get damage through on something that gets blocked or does block. And you can also use it as removal against things like Misfortune or Aurelia if you really need to remove them in a pinch. And finally, 3 copies of Decimate, the Noxus burn, just common card that everyone sees and everyone plays a full set of. It's just a great closeout. It deals a ton of damage to our opponent's Nexus, kills them very quickly, everything we want in a card. And then from there, let's talk about some of the flex spots. There's actually not a ton of things you can really flex in this deck because it's kind of fine-tuned as it is. There's not a lot of aggro pieces we're missing that we would want. But there are a number of things we can consider. Obviously, we're not taking full advantage of our champion package because we only have 1 copy of Darius, so we can easily put in more copies of Darius if you want to swap out Ruin Runner. Or probably a better option is to drop some of the other pieces that aren't as important, or maybe even drop some of the spells to go up like 2 copies of Draven. Draven's really great into any aggro deck, and we're no exception, so Draven would be a good addition since he can attack very safely, and he just gives us these axes to buff our units, so that's something well worth considering. Probably you would just go down, say, like, some Fervors, or you go down maybe, I mean, it's so hard to go down a lot of things, but, you know, you could trim off, like, a Runner, or, like, down the House Spiders, because we don't get a huge value out of House Spiders without Azir, so you could do something like that just to get some Dravens in there. As for some other units or followers that you can consider, definitely you could swap out Bakai Reaper for Precious Pet. If you're not getting a lot of slays or triggers like that, or not presenting great trades in that case, like Precious Pet can outdamage Bakai Reaper because it is a guaranteed 2 power fearsome rather than 1 power fearsome, so if you think getting slay triggers is going to be difficult, Precious Pet's something you can definitely swap in. Other than that, you can go Iron Ballista instead of Merciless Hunter if you're seeing a lot of things like Nasus that can block Merciless Hunter with things like Fading Icon. Then you could always consider going Iron Ballista, because then even if it does block, you're still going to force a lot of damage through. So there's definitely some situations where that might be better. And similarly, looking at the top end of our curve, we could always go a 1 of to maybe 2 of, but I probably wouldn't go more than a 1 of Captain Farron, maybe drop a Ruin Runner for it. You could even just drop the Darius completely and go Captain Farron instead, because while he's not quite as big of an overwhelmer, he does come with all those extra decimates, which can be really great if you're starting to see a lot more mid-range and control, because that gives you that little extra closeout against decks like that. So that's something worth considering too. There's a number of different spells you could consider, but I really don't think this deck is better off by going up spells. So while I normally have a couple of spells to mention, and there's some noticeable mentions like, say, Transfusion or Battle Bond, or yeah, those kind of spells, but I don't think they're really worth considering. I wouldn't do them at all. So, I mean, it's something you can look at, but there's not many spells that are going to really make this deck better. It kind of just excels off the fact that it throws so many units on the board so quickly, so diminishing your creature package is probably not advised. As for some basic mulligans, we're an aggro deck. We're looking for the aggro hands. You're just looking to curve out really well. If you can play 3 1-drops by the time, or by the end of turn 2, that's an incredible hand. You're going to keep that into any matchup, quite legitimately. So, really, you're just looking for the most amount of damage you can do as fast as possible. And this is one of those aggro decks where, like, you really aren't even considering what your opponent is doing often, because you're just better off running into them as fast as possible. The kind of exceptions, like maybe in the Aurelia matchup, you'd care a little bit more to have like good blockers like Azir or a Legion Grenadier. But still, you're going to mostly win that matchup by just presenting a faster clock with powerful 1-drop. So even then, I am remiss to make that choice when you can just creature swarm them, essentially. So, realistically speaking, against all of these decks, just look for the fastest, quickest kill. And then maybe with, like, mid-range decks, you're going to potentially consider keeping a Ruin Runner or a Darius. You're never going to want to keep a Decimate in your opening hand. You're probably never going to want to keep a Noxian Fervor either, unless you've somehow found the miraculous Fior deck out of nowhere, where it's going to really get you a lot of value, but generally speaking, you're not really going to want to keep it. Maybe if you expect a lot of life gain too, like a Targon mid-range deck, but Decimate you're definitely never keeping in your opening hand, and against control, again, you're really just looking to kill them as fast as possible. Ruin Runner does go up in value against control a lot more, because it's very hard for them to remove something like that because of how much health it has, and the added spell shield on top, so Ruin Runner definitely goes up in value against control. And that's the deck for this week's episode, so if you like the deck, there's a deck code and deck link in the description below, and let's just jump straight into some ranked matches and see how we do. Okay, Frostbite mid-range. This could be a problem. Well, we're attacking on turn 1 and turn 3. I think actually I would have preferred to attack on turn 2 in this matchup. But it's hard to say. Man, these Bakai Reapers are actually feeling pretty terrible. In theory, on paper, it should be good, but it's just not. Okay, well, we got the max turn 1 damage in. Okay, well, we can get a lot of damage into next turn, too, potentially. Yeah, didn't think he was going to attack. Well, that's actually pretty sweet. That does change our plan. What? Excuse me?
That's right. Run!
Okay, so he wasn't willing to block. Good to know. So he doesn't probably have anything in hand that's going to...
Let's have some fun.
Okay, so... No, it still trades, in theory.
Come on, boys.
Quit struggling.
Which I think is fine. Okay, so he takes the trade, gives us the Slay effect. So I can drain if I want. So it's probably worth draining. I think we just swing here, right? Okay, that does kind of change the dynamic of it.
I have my orders.
Ooh, that was pretty bad. That was really bad. Okay, so we definitely should have just swung. I don't know why I wasn't expecting Reckoning. Like, this is 100% a Reckoning deck, so I'm not sure why that didn't occur to me that he would play that. That mistake might cost us the game. It very, very possibly can cost us the game.
Nothing escapes my watch.
All the world on one arrow.
Okay.
If they don't break, they'll burn.
Well, that drops him to 1.
You for the minute.
But we have to deal 1 point of damage. So I can block here, I can block here, and I can block here. But he probably has Frostbite, and then Rune Raider or Rune Runner might not work that well anymore. Although he does need multiple sources of Frostbite.
Coming in hot!
Well, we did just create a new problem for our opponent. And that if this dies, I win. Unless he can gain life. I'm still going to play Rune Runner. That still happens, regardless of what he does here.
Out here, you're moving or you're dead. Victory requires a sharp blade.
Shouldn't be many outs to this. In fact, I'm not sure there's any outs to this.
These are
Oh, maybe Troll Chant? Well, actually, that still doesn't really work, right? Yeah, no, because if he buffs her health and lowers the attack here, double Troll Chant. Well, that's game. Alright. Well, that went marginally better. Ugh. Alright, we've finally found a win playing something that's not Irelia. Took long enough. On to the next. Oh, dear lord. Okay. Oh, well, this is gonna suck. Alright, how do we outrace? This could work. This could work. Okay, so we Reaper into Saboteur Dunekeeper. That'll be sick eventually. Nope, that's fine. Can't do anything about that. I mean, these Grenadiers could be good. We'll see if they are good, but they could be good.
The desert by my side. The Emperor commands, the land obeys.
I think we go for this. Yep. So that gives us a Slay Trigger. That gives us 2 Slay Triggers. I mean, obviously this isn't great for us by any means, especially since he probably comes down with Aurelia next turn and gets a bunch of free attacks. But, you know, we did what we could. We get to play Azir to block as well, so that's at least nice.
all in the shoulders.
Oh. Well, that's fine. We'll take a hit like that.
Shurima, your Emperor has returned.
Dear lord. Elusive Tron, assemble.
Watch me now.
You dare.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Is he going to Blade Dance? That's the better question. Yes, he is. I think you may regret that.
Reckless creature.
I think we can just open swing here, right? And that's probably in our best interest. Or actually, let's do this first.
Give me grace.
Yep, because I knew he had blade dances in hand.
You dare! A duty fulfilled, a life undone.
Although this does mean that he can now kill this Reaper, which is a little bit sad.
Fuse is lit! Victory at any cost!
Yeah, I think we do just swing with this, because it's not like it's going to become a better time for him later. And this still forces a fair amount of damage through. I guess we would have been better off with the open swing, but it's close enough. Now he probably played Demolitionist and Ping Azir. Okay, leveled up Azir.
What you have seen today.
Scary. Very scary.
Your emperor has returned.
For the
But we do have our opponent pretty close to dead. He's at 7 plus 2 more pings down to 5.
Showtime.
Okay. So we can block here and then take the 2. Yeah. We'll do that. And then we play Ruinous Path. We drop him to 5.
Destiny calls. Arise.
Okay. So he's gonna go like that. That's fine. So we block like this.
Sure about that?
And we drop him to 3, which is now at lethal with this Noxian Fervor. And I can Noxus Fervor plus Merciless Hunter next turn.
Arda's gonna make a meal of them.
I have
And Azir levels up.
Shurima.
Which is pretty sweet. And in theory, this is lethal, so my opponent has to find an answer to this as well. Which I'm guessing they don't have. Yep. And they do not have an answer to that. One of the bigger problems for Azir Aurelia, and it's also kind of a problem with the Misfortune variant, although to a lesser extent, it's that the deck doesn't handle Fearsomes well. So Fearsome units can actually run over it fairly well. So the Fearsomes are pretty good right now, and in that case our opponent didn't have a way to deal with our Fearsome, and our Fearsome was lethal, so we got the win. And we'll absolutely take that on next. Huh. Is this for LW's list? I don't know it that well, to be honest, and that's kind of a disadvantage at this present moment for me. It's got like Zoe, the Flight, star shapings, things like that, all the good stuff. Do I play Dune? I do play Dune Keeper, even though I'm not getting a ton of value out of him. Yep. Okay, this is probably for LW's list. So then the biggest thing that can blow us out here is Destiny's Call. But here's the thing about Destiny's Call. We can't do anything about it. So I'm not going to play around it. Because there's really no advantage to me playing around it. It's not going to work for me. Which trade? Okay, he doesn't want to trade. He'll take the max damage. Perfect. We're giving him gems, but we're doing a ton of damage to him. Now the problem is this deck does have life gain. So that's the big problem.
I pull the strings.
Fuse is lit.
You want to swing? I didn't think you'd like that trade. Sure. Well, that's incredible. That was a pretty big mistake on my opponent's part. Whether he knows it or not. That was a pretty big mistake on his part. Because now I get to do this open swing. And yeah, he can block here, but he's going to take 6 damage then, and he's down to 7. Which means if we play our cards right, we can actually kill our opponent fairly soon. So we're going to ping this rear guard. That's what we're going to do.
If they don't
This drops him to 5.
make the Empire proud.
And then we can play Rune Runner next turn? Yeah, sure. You can heal your Elise. Currently does not matter, though.
Seen tombs, towns, and everything in
Okay. I mean, there's certainly things this deck can do to us that's bad. For us.
Oh, yeah.
So don't get me wrong. There are definitely things that can go wrong. But we are in as good of shape as we can be. And our opponent has decided that they can outrace. They are likely incorrect.
Strike at their foundations.
And we go like that. Okay. Got the second one in hand? Well, you do. Double hush. Alright.
Oh, you're interesting.
So you chump block? I mean, he's probably dead.
Come, stay a
Nope. Can't do that. Nope. You have to block that. Yep. That's game. We win. Double hush. Which is pretty sweet, but it does mean that he is dead. Goodbye. Didn't even get to emote. Alright, well that was sick. That went extraordinarily well. We do take games like that, that's for sure. On to the deck. Okay, discard aggro running Teemo. That... Is there like an elusive deck that they're particularly worried about? Because that's just kind of bad. I'm gonna keep this, though I'm not at all sold on the hand. Okay, that's actually pretty sick. We're gonna play Reaper. Because we're going to play it regardless, so... Might as well play it now.
The Emperor commands, the land obeys.
Okay. Well, let's go double Reaper then.
Azir's command!
Not the highest damage output. I thought he was gonna fall for that. Imagine if he blocked with the Spiderling here and the House Spider there. Oh, that would have been so funny. That would have been glorious. Oh, double slay. Get our stuff done. See what he plays this turn.
The party has arrived.
Okay. Now we don't play the Merciless yet. Not yet.
Coming right up.
Okay, throw that in front. And then we play Rearguard.
Reporting in.
And then we play Saboteur. I think. Do we play... Wait, do we play Saboteur or do we play Bakai Reaper? We'll play Reaper. So close to leveling up this Azir. We can really get him with something here. Okay. But he didn't play Jinx, sadly. Sadly did not play Jinx. What you got? Okay, I mean, like, admittedly, that was pretty bad for him, but I don't know what his hand was. But obviously, what we were going to do there is we were going to swing, and Rearguard was going to pull Draven, and then we put the 4-3 and all of our... Well, actually, no, we don't... So we pull Draven with the Rearguard. That way, Rearguard will die, but he kills Draven, and that gives us a Slay trigger for all of our Reapers. Then we swing with the House Spider, followed by the 4-3, followed by all of our Reapers. And that way, if he blocks the House Spider, we get another Slay trigger for all of our Reapers. And yeah, that turn was going to go pretty bad for him. And if he... Because I assume this is what he was thinking of, based on the fact that he pulled a spell and was considering it, was that he was going to get excited one of our creatures that could kill Draven. But even if he does that, we still have one other one that can. So Draven dies regardless. And that was really just going to be pretty much the dunzos for our opponent. So that was pretty sweet. We take those. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. No es bueno. For sure. Okay, that's a little bit better. It's a decent aggro curve out, but... This can go sideways for us so fast. All of our stuff dies super easily, so it's supremely easy for my opponent to get Slay triggers against us. Like, this hand's alright, but like, imagine if he goes turn 1 Dunekeeper. Like, I play this Saboteur and he goes Dunekeeper. If I don't swing, it probably dies to Vile Feast and he gets the Slay trigger anyways. If I do swing, he just trades with the Sand Soldier. Like, there's so many bad things that my opponent can do to me.
See what we see.
Yeah, I mean... We're an aggro deck. We're not particularly good off waiting. But he has one Slay trigger now. And we have an empty board. House Spider, go! Come on, come on, play it. Play it. Yep, doesn't even attack, perfect. So we play Merciless Hunter.
We love it when they run.
If I'd forgotten them. Oh.
Yikes.
That's right. Run.
Yeah. Board wipe. Of course, he still has praise, but... I mean... So, here's the thing. We're going in turn 4, and my opponent's at 19 health, and I'm at 20 health, and I have nothing on board, and he has, like, 5 or 6 Slay triggers. Like, this game's over. Like, I cannot stress that enough. This game is over. Like, there's no coming back. I mean, we're going to try our absolute bestest, but... We are so unfavored at this point that it's not even remotely funny. I think we play Ruin Runner here, although we can also play Merciless Hunter plus Demolitionist, which would be sweet, but I think we play Ruin Runner.
Seen tombs, towns, and everything in between.
Worst case scenario, Spirit Leap, I think. I mean, there might be some other ludicrous things that my opponent can do. That's up there.
Out of the way.
No place for men.
Yeah. Yep, that's expected. Well, I still get the trades. But that was another 2 Slay triggers for my opponent. So again, we are dying incredibly quick. Like, if he has Nasus here, like he just plays Nasus, we actually just lose the game right then and there, I think. Well. What did I say?
Gonna find a gift for Renekton, right, Arda?
I mean, what's our chance that we kill our opponent with this, Well, I mean, we just died to Atrocity. Yeah, like, this game could not have gone worse for us. This is not the deck that we are built to deal with, that's for sure. And certainly not with the hand we had. Like, if we had, like, the 3-drop Tron, that could have worked.
War Mason, reporting for duty.
Oh yeah, and the Nasus trigger just, like, ruins our game. If this Darius came down, leveled up, we had a chance. But since he's not leveled up, I don't think we have a chance. And in fact, we just died to this Nasus on the crackback, regardless of what happens, correct?
Your command, General Darius.
Should have given this vulnerable, so then we could have swung into that. That would have been better. I mean, we're just dead. Yeah, we're just dead. I'm not wasting any more time with this. Like, it's over. So no matter what, we don't have another 3-power. So as long as he gets to the next turn, he just pulls our 3-power with Thresh and we die to Nasus right then and there, and nothing we can draw off the top saves us. So that game's just over. Complete wash. Whatever. So, how did we do in our matches? Well, we went 4-1 on the video, and in total, we're 6-3. So it's a 66% win rate. Could be better, could be worse. More concerning, Azir Aurelia 1-2. They've been very, very close games, but Azir Aurelia is the better aggro deck, which is unfortunate. You see a lot of it right now, so that's the biggest concern I have with the deck. Thresh, Nasus, we split 1-1, but that also feels relatively rough. But aside from that, we beat every other deck, including discard aggro, which is usually the big speed test for aggro decks on whether they can hold their own or not. So we beat that. We beat the Zoe Elise deck that I saw a bit of at the beginning of the season. We beat LeBlanc Ashe, which that was just kind of a little bit surprising. We beat the new Cytherea combo, although that was like Kalista Shyvana, and that combo is far from settled into a certain framework, essentially, other than it is Kalista. But that's not saying too much that we won that matchup. So, a lot of different decks. Got a good spread this week. Still got 9 games in, so that's a pretty good number of ranked games to get in for an on the grind. Particularly considering I've played this a decent bit in normals, and I played Azir Burn last season when it first kind of came out, but it was kind of very quickly edged out by other aggro decks, so I didn't play too much of it back then. So this is my first time really deep diving into it. So I had played a handful of normals on it. It had felt really good in that, so I was like, alright, we'll keep an eye on this. And in fact, the original deck I was going to play was Freljord Overwhelm, but that deck is trash. It loses to really bad decks, and that really frustrates me. I don't like playing any decks where you're going to lose to like garbage decks and lose consistently to garbage decks. So this deck at least has that nice fallback of it can win against any deck, because you could just have the really great hand, and if their hand's not perfect, you'll just run them over. So I do like that aspect of this. That said, ultimately 66% win rate over the 9 games does still put it lower than my Aurelia Misfortune deck right now, which has a 68% win rate over 19 games. And I don't know, the Aurelia deck just feels stronger right now. So if I'm going to play aggro, I'm leaning towards that. I'll mess around a little bit more with this deck and see what it can do. But the Aurelia Misfortune deck still feels a little bit stronger, and that kind of does edge out the aggro matchup then. And it does have the added benefit of it does better against Azir Aurelia, because the MF Aurelia deck is better than the Azir Aurelia deck. My win rate just keeps going up in that matchup. So this deck losing to Azir Aurelia, and Azir Aurelia being such a huge portion of the meta right now, kind of the biggest hit on this deck. There's a good chance, though, that this deck's not going to see many nerfs, although I do think Dunekeeper and Azir himself are at risk right now. So it's possible this deck gets hit, but obviously it's not as, like, immediate threat as the Blade Dance cards are. So this is a decent deck to keep your eye on going into the next patch, into whatever nerfs come, because I do think this is reasonably strong right now. Certainly not a bad deck if you want to just play aggro and try to slam in as many matches as you can. This is a perfectly fine choice for that. And I do think it will probably still be fairly good after any nerfs come in, although then maybe you shift towards other regions if Shurima gets hit hard enough. But yeah, fun deck to play. If you're looking for a different aggro deck that's not playing Aurelia, this is a fun way to go, and it gives you that old, really sweet Noxus package where you have some of the craziest turn 2s where you go like Legion Rearguard or like Saboteur, 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 you know, it's just crazy things like that makes your opponent want to scoop up instantly on turn 2, and that's just fun to play sometimes, so it does give you that, which is pretty sweet. And yeah, just in general, it's a fun deck. So if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more Legends of Runeterra content.